Welcome back to the Emma International Deep Dive Podcast. I'm Eric, and as always, I'm joined by Anna.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be back. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Today, we're talking about something that's reshaping the future of clinical research: decentralized digital and data-driven clinical trials. We'll explore how these new approaches are changing everything from patient recruitment and study oversight to data collection, compliance, and overall trial execution.
It's a fascinating topic because we're really in the middle of one of the biggest shifts clinical development has seen in decades. For a long time, clinical trials followed a fairly traditional model. Patients traveled to research sites, data was collected during scheduled visits, and much of the oversight relied on manual processes and in person interactions. But that's changing quickly.
It really is. And a lot of that change accelerated during the pandemic. Organizations had to find new ways to keep studies running while minimizing disruptions for patients and investigators. What started as a necessity ended up showing the industry that there are often more efficient ways to conduct certain aspects of clinical research. Now we're seeing many of those changes become part of long-term clinical trial strategies.
One of the biggest benefits organizations are seeing is improved patient access. Traditional trials can create significant barriers to participation. Patients may need to travel long distances, take time off work, arrange childcare, or make frequent visits to a study site over several months. For many people, that's simply not practical.
And that's where decentralized trial models can make a real difference. Organizations are incorporating telemedicine visits, remote patient monitoring, wearable devices, electronic patient-reported outcomes, and even home healthcare services into study designs. Instead of requiring every activity to happen at a physical site, many portions of a trial can now happen remotely while still maintaining appropriate oversight.
And that flexibility isn't just convenient, it's helping improve patient engagement and retention as well. Anyone involved in clinical research knows that keeping patients engaged throughout a study can be challenging. The more burdensome participation becomes, the greater the risk of dropouts. Reducing that burden can have a significant impact on study success.
Absolutely. In fact, Emma International recently worked with an organization that was evaluating how to modernize its clinical trial infrastructure. They were expanding global study operations and wanted to understand how decentralized and digital technologies could be incorporated while still maintaining compliance, data integrity, and inspection readiness. Interestingly, the technology itself wasn't the biggest challenge.
Let me guess, the challenge was figuring out how everything would work together operationally?
Exactly. The tools were available. The real question was how to integrate them into a regulated environment in a way that was scalable and sustainable.
And that's where a lot of organizations find themselves today. Decentralized trials aren't simply about adding new technology. They require companies to rethink workflows, oversight models, vendor management, risk management, and even how quality systems support clinical operations. It's a much broader operational transformation.
That's what this organization was facing. They were evaluating remote monitoring platforms, wearable technologies, electronic consent systems, and AI-assisted tools for recruitment and patient engagement. But leadership needed a clear understanding of how all those pieces would fit together while maintaining compliance and operational control.
And once you start layering multiple technologies into a clinical trial, the complexity can increase very quickly. Now you're talking about data flow, cybersecurity, interoperability, system validation, patient privacy, and ongoing oversight responsibilities. That's a lot to manage, especially when those systems are generating data continuously.
That's a great point. One of the biggest shifts we're seeing is the sheer volume of data being generated. Traditionally, data was collected periodically during site visits. Today, organizations may be receiving continuous streams of information from wearable devices, mobile applications, remote sensors, and connected platforms. That changes how teams approach monitoring, analytics, and decision-making throughout the study.
And it also changes how organizations think about risk. When data is coming from multiple decentralized sources, governance becomes incredibly important. Teams need confidence in where the data originated, how it was transmitted, how it was processed, and whether it remained accurate throughout its life cycle. Those questions become critical when you're making decisions based on that information. And regulators are paying close attention to all of this. The FDA, EMA, and other global regulatory agencies continue to emphasize expectations around data integrity, patient safety, cybersecurity, and oversight in decentralized trial environments. So, while these technologies create new opportunities, organizations still need to demonstrate that they're operating within a controlled and validated framework.
That's an important point because sometimes people assume decentralized trials mean less oversight. In reality, it's often the opposite. When activities are spread across patients, vendors, digital platforms, and clinical sites, maintaining visibility and control becomes even more important.
Exactly. You're no longer overseeing activity in one centralized location. You're managing an entire ecosystem of people, processes, and technologies. That requires a different approach to governance.
And that's where Emma focused much of its support for this client. The goal wasn't simply to implement technology, it was to help build the processes and infrastructure needed to support decentralized operations over the long term. That included reviewing governance structures, vendor oversight programs, validation approaches, risk management strategies, and how all of those elements connected back to the quality system.
And vendor management became a major part of the conversation. And because decentralized trials typically involve a larger network of partners than traditional studies, you may have telehealth providers, wearable technology companies, home healthcare organizations, central laboratories, logistics providers, cloud platform vendors, and data analytics teams all contributing to the same study.
And every additional partner introduces additional risk. The organization needed stronger frameworks around qualification, oversight, communication, and accountability. Because at the end of the day, sponsors remain responsible for ensuring the study is conducted in compliance with regulatory expectations, regardless of how many vendors are involved.
Another major focus area was patient privacy. Decentralized trials generate large amounts of personal and health related information across multiple digital platforms. Organizations need to ensure that data handling practices support patient confidentiality while also meeting cybersecurity and regulatory requirements.
And informed consent is evolving as well. Electronic consent platforms are becoming increasingly common because they allow patients to review study materials remotely, access educational content, and complete documentation digitally. But technology doesn't eliminate the need for clear communication. Organizations still need to ensure patients fully understand the study, the risks involved, and what participation requires.
That's such an important distinction. Technology can improve access and convenience, but the human side of clinical research remains critical. Patients still need education support and ongoing communication throughout the study journey.
Absolutely. In fact, patient engagement became another key component of the organization's strategy. Digital tools create opportunities for more consistent interaction with participants through reminders, symptom tracking, study updates, and other engagement activities. But those programs need structure and oversight, just like any other aspect of the trial.
And that's where the data driven piece of this conversation becomes especially interesting. Organizations are increasingly using advanced analytics and AI supported tools to improve decision making throughout clinical studies. They're looking at enrollment trends, site performance, patient engagement metrics, and potential operational risks in ways that weren't possible just a few years ago.
It's really changing how trials are managed. Historically, many decisions were reactive. Teams often discovered issues after delays had already occurred. Now, organizations are moving toward more predictive models where potential problems can be identified earlier through continuous analysis of operational data.
Recruitment is a great example. Enrollment challenges remain one of the biggest reasons studies are delayed. Data driven approaches can help organizations identify promising patient populations, geographic trends, site performance indicators, and engagement opportunities much earlier in the process.
But with that comes another important consideration. As AI and predictive analytics play a larger role in clinical operations, organizations need to think carefully about validation, bias, explainability, and accountability. Just because a model generates an insight doesn't mean teams can blindly rely on it.
Exactly. Governance remains at the center of everything. Technology can absolutely improve efficiency and scalability, but without proper oversight, organizations risk creating fragmented processes and additional compliance challenges.
And that brings us back to one of the primary objectives of this engagement: integration. The client already had quality systems, clinical procedures, and compliance frameworks in place. The goal wasn't to create a completely separate operating model for decentralized trials. It was to integrate these new capabilities into the broader organization in a way that was practical and sustainable.
And that's especially important as organizations scale. Like many companies start with a pilot program or a single study. But if those processes aren't standardized, scaling becomes difficult very quickly. You can end up with inconsistent approaches across study teams, regions, and vendors.
And consistency is critical when it comes to inspection readiness. Organizations need to clearly demonstrate how digital systems are validated, how remote oversight is conducted, how data integrity is maintained, and how decentralized activities are controlled.
The scope of inspection readiness is expanding as well. It's no longer limited to traditional site documentation. Regulators may ask questions about cloud platforms, wearable devices, remote monitoring systems, cybersecurity controls, vendor oversight programs, and even algorithm driven analytics. Organizations need to ensure their teams can confidently explain how those processes work.
And that's why cross functional collaboration was such an important part of this project. Clinical operations, quality, regulatory affairs, IT, cybersecurity, and data management all needed to align around a common framework, because decentralized trials impact nearly every function within the organization.
I think that's one of the biggest lessons organizations are learning right now. The future of clinical trials isn't simply about adopting new technologies. It's about building the operational infrastructure needed to support that technology effectively. That means governance, scalable processes, integrated quality systems, and long term oversight strategies.
And another interesting takeaway is that decentralized trials aren't necessarily replacing traditional site models altogether. What we're seeing more often is the rise of hybrid approaches. Certain activities may still occur on site, while others are conducted remotely depending on the study design, patient population, and therapeutic area.
And for many organizations, that balance makes sense. Not every study can operate fully remotely, but even partial decentralization can improve recruitment, retention, patient accessibility, and operational efficiency.
As clinical development continues to become more global, that flexibility becomes increasingly valuable. Organizations can reach broader patient populations while creating more scalable and patient friendly trial experiences.
But regardless of the model, the fundamentals remain the same. Patient safety, data integrity, regulatory compliance, and effective oversight must always remain the foundation.
Exactly. Technology is an enabler, not a replacement for strong clinical and quality practices. And that's really one of the biggest lessons from this engagement. The future of clinical trials is decentralized, digital, and data driven, but it still depends on a strong framework of quality, governance, and compliance.
Well said. Organizations that approach this transformation strategically will be much better positioned for the future. Because this isn't a temporary trend, it's a long term evolution in how clinical research is designed, managed, and executed around the world.
And when we look at this engagement overall, that's exactly what Emma International helped the client accomplish. Moving beyond isolated technology initiatives and toward a scalable operational strategy that supported innovation, strengthened oversight, improved patient accessibility, and aligned clinical operations with evolving regulatory expectations. Thank you for joining us for today's deep dive. If your organization is exploring decentralized trial strategies, modernizing clinical operations, strengthening digital governance, or looking to align data driven initiatives with regulatory expectations, Emma International is here to help. You can reach us at info@eminternational.com or visit us at eminternational.com.
And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. Thanks for